It was supposed to be a glamorous Christmas gala. Crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, 300 of the city's most powerful
You
people.
always know how to make
And
me laugh
one
like
pregnant
this.
wife standing in the center of it all,
Oh,
praying
I
her
have
husband
many
would finally
talents you
look at
haven't
her
seen
the
yet.
way he used to. But when his mistress walked straight up to her and threw a glass of red wine directly in her face, the whole room went silent. Her husband did not rush to defend her.
It's just so much.
He
I'm
blamed
scared,
her.
Dad.
Her mother-in-law did not
You're going
offer
to be a
comfort.
wonderful mother,
She whispered
Elle.
to the crowd that the poor thing
be
was
right
mentally
here.
unstable. And every single second was recorded and uploaded for millions to watch. But here is what nobody in that room knew. Not the
For
cheating
too long,
husband,
these
not his
holes
cruel
have
mother,
hidden the
not the
truth.
mistress who thought
But
she had
as you
already
can
won.
see,
The mansion they were
justice has
standing in
finally
belonged to
arrived.
someone they should have feared. Someone who had been watching from the balcony the entire time. Someone who was about to burn their entire world to the ground. Her father. And trust me, what happens next will leave you absolutely speechless. The moment Eleanor Mitchell stepped into Frostwood Manor, she knew something was wrong. Call it intuition. Call it the instinct of a woman who had spent 3 years learning to read the tension in a room before it exploded. Whatever it was, it whispered to her now, telling her that this Christmas gala was not going to end well. She paused at the threshold, one hand resting on her 7-month pregnant belly, and took in the scene before her. The grand ballroom sparkled with 10,000 tiny lights strung through towering evergreen trees. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across the marble floors. An orchestra played gentle Christmas carols in the corner, their music floating through air that smelled of cinnamon, pine, and expensive perfume. 300 of the city's most powerful people mingled beneath the vaulted ceilings, their laughter echoing off walls lined with priceless art. Women in designer gowns air-kissed each other while their husbands discussed stock portfolios and golf handicaps. Servers in crisp white uniforms circulated with champagne flutes and canapes that cost more per bite than most people earned in an hour. It was beautiful. It was glamorous. And Eleanor had never felt more out of place in her entire life. She wore a soft blue maternity dress that she had bought 2 seasons ago, back when Victor still smiled at her across the breakfast table. Back when he still reached for her hand in public. Back when she still believed that love could survive anything, even the slow poison of his family's disapproval. Those days felt like a lifetime ago now. Victor stood 2 steps ahead of her, adjusting his tie, while scanning the room with the hungry eyes of a man looking for someone more important than his wife. He had not offered his arm when they got out of the car. He had not complimented her dress. He had barely looked at her at all during the drive over. Eleanor had learned to pretend she did not notice these things. She had become an expert at swallowing disappointment the same way she swallowed morning sickness. Quietly, privately, without making a scene. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend Caroline, who everyone called Caro. The message read, "You are going to the snake pit voluntarily. On Christmas. Girl." Eleanor typed back quickly, "It is important to Victor." Caro's response was immediate. "The only thing important to Victor is Victor. But fine, I am tracking your location. If you are not out by 11, I am calling the National Guard." Despite everything, Eleanor smiled. Caro had been her roommate in law school, her maid of honor at her wedding, and her lifeline during the past 3 years of marriage to the Harrington family. She was the only person who still remembered the woman Eleanor used to be, the one who graduated top of her class, the one who never lost a case, the one who had dreams bigger than being somebody's wife. That woman felt like a stranger now. Victor turned and noticed she was still standing at the entrance. Impatience flickered across his handsome features. "Try not to embarrass me tonight," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "And try not to waddle. People are watching." The words hit her like a slap, but Eleanor kept her expression neutral. She had learned that reacting only made things worse. "Of course," she said, "I will do my best." She followed him into the ballroom, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The baby kicked hard against her ribs, as if sensing her distress. Eleanor pressed her palm against the movement and whispered a silent reassurance. "It is okay, little one. We are okay." She wished she believed it. The first person to approach them was Margaret Harrington, Victor's mother and the unofficial queen of the social circle. Margaret was 64 years old but looked 50, thanks to the best plastic surgeons money could buy. She wore a silver gown that caught the light with every movement, and her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "There you are," Margaret said, air kissing Eleanor without actually touching her. "Oh, you wore that dress. How brave of you." Eleanor forced a smile. "Merry Christmas, Margaret." Margaret's eyes traveled down to Eleanor's belly with barely concealed distaste. "We discussed the importance of presentation, did we not? But I suppose in your condition, one cannot expect much." Before Eleanor could respond, a ripple of excitement passed through the crowd. Heads turned toward the main entrance. Whispers erupted like small fires spreading through dry brush. "She is here," someone murmured. Eleanor did not need to look to know who had arrived. She could tell by the way Victor's entire posture changed, the way his shoulders straightened, the way his eyes lit up with an interest he had not shown her in months. Sabrina Cole made her entrance like a queen claiming her throne. She wore a red dress that clung to every curve, the fabric catching the light like liquid fire. Her dark hair cascaded over one shoulder in perfect waves. Her lips were painted the exact shade of her dress, and her smile was the smile of a woman who knew every eye in the room was on her, especially the eyes of Eleanor's husband. Victor did not even pretend to hide his reaction. He took a step towards Sabrina, then another, as if pulled by an invisible string. Within seconds, he had crossed the room to greet her, leaving Eleanor standing alone beside his mother. Margaret watched her son's departure with satisfaction. She leaned closer to Eleanor, her voice a poisonous whisper. "A successful man deserves a woman who matches his status." She never stopped smiling. "Surely you understand that by now." Eleanor's throat tightened. She watched Victor lean close to Sabrina, watched him whisper something that made her laugh and touch his arm. The intimacy between them was unmistakable. This was not an affair hidden in shadows. This was a declaration made in plain sight. The baby kicked again. Eleanor pressed her hand against her stomach and took a slow breath. "I need to find the restroom," she said quietly. She walked away before Margaret could respond. Her legs trembled beneath her. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. 3 years. She had given up 3 years of her life for this man. She had abandoned her career. She had shrunk herself smaller and smaller to fit into the mold his family demanded. She had believed that if she just tried harder, loved harder, sacrificed more, eventually it would be enough. But it would never be enough. She understood that now. The problem was understanding did not make it hurt any less. Eleanor found a quiet alcove near the service corridor and leaned against the wall. She closed her eyes and focused on breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The same technique she had learned in the labor preparation classes she attended alone, because Victor always had more important things to do. She was so focused on not falling apart that she almost missed the voices drifting through the partially open door beside her. Almost. Tonight she needs to be humiliated completely. Eleanor's eyes snapped open. She knew that voice. It was Sabrina. Another voice responded. Margaret's voice. It is time she understood her place. Removing her from Victor's life will only help him. This Christmas gala is simply a convenient stage. Eleanor's blood ran cold. She pressed herself against the wall, hardly daring to breathe. Sabrina spoke again. When do we do it? During the toast, Margaret replied. Maximum audience, and my son will stand with you, not with her. That much I can promise. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth to muffle the gasp that escaped her. They were planning something deliberate, something designed to destroy her in front of 300 witnesses. She had to leave. She had to get out of here before whatever they were planning could happen. But before she could move, footsteps approached from the other direction. Victor appeared at the end of the corridor, his expression irritated. There you are, he said. The toast is about to start. Try to look happy for once. He grabbed her arm and pulled her back toward the ballroom. Eleanor tried to resist, tried to tell him she needed to leave, but his grip was too tight and the words stuck in her throat. The orchestra fell silent. Margaret took her place at the microphone on the small stage at the front of the room. 300 pairs of eyes turned to watch. And Eleanor stood, frozen in the center of it all, trapped in the glittering cage she had built around herself, waiting for the blow she could not escape. Margaret Harrington commanded the room like a general surveying her troops before battle. She stood at the microphone with perfect posture, her silver gown shimmering under the spotlight. Her smile was warm and gracious. the smile of a woman who had spent decades perfecting the art of public performance. "Welcome, dear friends, to our annual Christmas gala," she began. Her voice was honey smooth, each word precisely measured. "Tonight we celebrate family, we celebrate legacy, we celebrate the boissons that tie us together through generations of tradition." Eleanor stood near the center of the ballroom, surrounded by guests who seemed to lean away from her unconsciously. Victor had already drifted several feet away, positioning himself closer to where Sabrina stood near the champagne table. She was alone in a crowd of hundreds. Margaret continued her speech, speaking of charity and community and the importance of standing together. But her eyes kept finding Eleanor, and each glance carried the weight of barely concealed contempt. "To family," Margaret said, raising her glass. "To the people who truly belong." The pause before that last word was deliberate. The emphasis was unmistakable. Several guests exchanged knowing glances. "To family," the crowd echoed, glasses lifting throughout the room. Eleanor raised her water glass with trembling hands. The baby shifted inside her, restless and uncomfortable, responding to the stress hormones flooding her system. She wanted to leave, she wanted to run, but her legs felt rooted to the floor, and the crowd pressed in around her like a living wall. That was when she saw Sabrina moving. The woman in the red dress was cutting through the crowd with deliberate slowness, a glass of wine in her hand. Not champagne like everyone else was drinking. Wine. Deep red wine, the color of old blood. Sabrina smiled at guests as she passed. She laughed at comments. She touched shoulders and exchanged pleasantries. But her trajectory never wavered. She was moving directly toward Eleanor. Eleanor's heart began to pound. She remembered the conversation she had overheard. Tonight she needs to be humiliated completely. Maximum audience. She tried to step backward, but there were too many people behind her. She tried to move to the side, but a waiter blocked her path. She was trapped. Sabrina stopped less than 2 feet away. Her smile was the smile of a predator who had cornered her prey. "Eleanor," she said, loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "you look exhausted. Maybe you should go home and rest. This much excitement cannot be good for you in your condition." The words dripped with false concern. Several guests turned to watch the exchange. "I am fine," Eleanor managed. "Thank you for your concern." Sabrina tilted her head, examining Eleanor like a scientist studying a specimen. "Are you, though? You seem so pale, so fragile. I worry about you, I really do." Margaret appeared beside Sabrina as if summoned by some invisible signal. She placed a hand over her heart in an exaggerated gesture of sympathy. "Yes, dear," Margaret added. "You really do not look well. Perhaps all of this is too much for you. The noise, the crowd, the stress of trying to fit in." Eleanor felt her cheeks burning. Every word they spoke was designed to make her look weak, unstable, unsuitable. "I am perfectly fine," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I appreciate your concern, but there is nothing wrong with me." Sabrina's smile widened. Her eyes glittered with anticipation. She lifted her wine glass slightly, and Eleanor saw her wrist rotate almost imperceptibly. Time seemed to slow down. Eleanor saw what was about to happen a fraction of a second before it did. She tried to raise her hands. She tried to step back, but her pregnant body was slow and clumsy, and there was nowhere to go. Sabrina's wrist flicked. The wine left the glass in a perfect arc. It caught the light from the chandeliers for one crystalline moment, a spray of crimson suspended in the air like a bloody constellation. Then it hit Eleanor directly in the face. The liquid was cold and sharp against her skin. It flooded her eyes, her nose, her mouth. It soaked into her hair and streamed down her neck. It spread across the front of her blue dress like a wound opening across her body. For one eternal second, the ballroom went completely silent. Then Sabrina gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in a performance of shock. "Oh my God, I am so sorry. My heel caught on something. I tripped. It was an accident." Eleanor stood frozen. Wine dripped from her chin. Her eyes stung. Her dress clung to her pregnant belly, the pale blue fabric now streaked with red. She could not breathe. She could not move. She could only stand there as 300 pairs of eyes stared at her in horror and fascination. Someone in the crowd pulled out a phone and started recording. Then another. Then another. Margaret rushed forward with a napkin, dabbing at Eleanor's dress while making the stain worse. "Oh dear," she said loudly. "Look at this mess. Are you all right? You look unstable. Perhaps you should sit down. She tripped, Sabrina repeated, her voice carrying across the silent room. Everyone saw it. I barely moved my hand. She must have startled me. You know how clumsy pregnant women can be. Eleanor's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked around desperately, searching for help, searching for Victor. She found him standing near the champagne table, exactly where he had been before. Their eyes met across the ballroom. His expression was not sympathetic. It was not outraged on her behalf. It was annoyed, embarrassed, as if she had done something to inconvenience him. He walked toward her slowly, and for one moment Eleanor thought he might defend her, might tell everyone the truth, might finally choose her. What have you done? Victor said quietly when he reached her. His voice was cold. You are making a scene. You are embarrassing yourself. The words shattered something inside Eleanor. Something that had been cracking for years finally broke completely. She did it on purpose, Eleanor whispered. She threw it at me. Victor's jaw tightened. It was an accident. Everyone saw her trip. Now clean yourself up and try to act normal. Eleanor stared at him, at this stranger who shared her bed, at the father of the child growing inside her, at the man she had given up everything for. He was not going to help her. He was never going to help her. He was one of them. Margaret stepped closer, her voice carrying to the guests nearby. Poor thing. Pregnancy hormones, you know. She has been so emotional lately. We have been worried about her mental state. There it was, the narrative they had prepared. The unstable pregnant woman. The emotional wife who could not handle the stress of high society. They were not just humiliating her. They were building a case. Eleanor felt the room spinning. The wine stung her eyes. Tears mixed with the red liquid streaming down her face. The baby kicked frantically against her ribs, responding to her skyrocketing heart rate. She had to get out. She had to run. Eleanor turned and pushed through the crowd. She did not care about dignity anymore. She did not care about the whispers or the recording phones or the shocked gasps that followed her. She ran. Her heels caught on the marble floor. Her dress tangled around her legs. Her belly made movement awkward and painful. But she kept going, pushing past servers and guests and security guards until she found a door that led away from the ballroom. She burst through it and found herself in a long corridor lined with oil paintings and antique furniture. She kept running until she reached a bathroom. She locked the door behind her and finally let herself fall apart. Eleanor slid to the floor and sobbed. She cried for the humiliation. She cried for the betrayal. She cried for the woman she used to be and the woman she had become. She cried for her baby, who would be born into this nightmare. She cried for the father she had lost 15 years ago, the one person who might have protected her if he had not disappeared from her life without explanation. Her phone buzzed, a text from Caro. I saw the video, it is already online. I am coming to get you. Do not move. Eleanor stared at the message through blurry eyes, already online. Of course, by tomorrow, millions of people would watch her humiliation. She looked at herself in the mirror, wine-stained, mascara smeared, broken. 3 years ago, she had graduated top of her law school class. She had passed the bar on her first try. She had been on track to make partner before she was 35. Now she was hiding in a bathroom, covered in wine, while her husband blamed her for being attacked. How did I get here? She whispered to her reflection. The woman in the mirror had no answer. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of pain and revelation. Caro arrived at Frostwood Manor within an hour, talked her way past security, and smuggled Eleanor out through a service entrance. They drove to Caro's apartment, where Eleanor showered away the wine and changed into borrowed clothes that did not fit her pregnant body. Then they watched the video together. It had already been viewed over 200,000 times. Someone had set it to dramatic music. Someone else had added slow motion effects to the moment the wine hit Eleanor's face. The comments were brutal. Did you see her husband just stand there? One person wrote. He did not even move. That was not an accident, another commented. Watch her wrist. She threw it directly at her. But there were other comments too, comments that made Eleanor's stomach turn. Pregnant women are so dramatic, someone had written. She probably did something to deserve it. I heard she is mentally unstable, another person claimed. The mother-in-law has been worried about her for months. The narrative was already spreading. The story the Harrington family wanted told was being repeated and amplified by strangers who had never met Eleanor but felt confident judging her based on a 30-second clip. "This is insane," Caro said, staring at her phone. "They are lying. Everyone can see they are lying." But lies repeated often enough became truth. Eleanor knew that better than anyone. She did not sleep that night. She lay on Caro's couch, staring at the ceiling, one hand pressed against her belly where the baby moved restlessly. What was she going to do? She had no money of her own. Victor controlled all their accounts. She had no job because she had given up her career when Margaret insisted that a proper Harrington wife did not work. She had no home because she lived in a guest house on the Harrington estate, and she doubted she would be welcome there after tonight. She had nothing. She was no one. Her phone buzzed with a text from Victor at 3 in the morning. "We need to talk. Come to the house tomorrow." Eleanor stared at the message for a long time. Then she turned off her phone and tried to sleep. The next morning, she made a decision. She would not run. She would not hide. She would go back to that house and face whatever came next. Caro tried to talk her out of it. "This is a trap," Caro said. "They humiliated you publicly, and now they want you alone on their territory. Do not go." But Eleanor shook her head. "I have to know what they are planning. I have to understand what I am up against." She arrived at the Harrington guest house just after noon. The main mansion loomed in the distance, its windows glittering in the winter sun like cold eyes watching her every move. Victor was waiting for her in the living room. He looked tired. He looked annoyed. He did not look like a man who had any intention of apologizing. "Sit down," he said. Eleanor sat. Her back ached, her feet throbbed, the baby pressed against her bladder. But she kept her expression neutral and waited. Victor paced in front of the fireplace. "Last night was a disaster. Mother is furious. The video is everywhere. People are asking questions." "People are asking questions," Eleanor repeated. "About why your girlfriend threw wine in my face?" Victor's jaw tightened. "She is not my girlfriend." Eleanor almost laughed. "Victor, I have seen the text messages. I have smelled her perfume on your shirts." "I know," the confession hung in the air between them. Victor stopped pacing. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or just frustration at being caught. "Fine," he said. "Sabrina and I have been seeing each other, but that is not relevant right now." "Not relevant," Eleanor repeated. She could not believe what she was hearing. "You have been cheating on me for months. Your mother has been making my life miserable for years. And last night your girlfriend physically assaulted me in front of 300 people. How is any of that not relevant?" Victor's expression hardened. "You need to stop playing the victim, Eleanor. You have been difficult since the day we got married. You never fit in with our family. You never tried to make mother happy. And now you are pregnant and emotional and making everything worse." "I am making everything worse," Eleanor said slowly. "I see." She stood up. Her legs were shaking, but her voice was steady. "I want a divorce," she said. Victor laughed. A cold, cruel sound. "A divorce? With what money? With what lawyer? You have nothing, Eleanor. You signed a prenup that gives you nothing if you leave this marriage. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do?" "I will figure something out," Eleanor said. Victor stepped closer. His voice dropped to a menacing whisper. "No, you will not. Because here is what is going to happen. You are going to issue a public apology. You are going to say that last night was a misunderstanding and that you overreacted because of pregnancy hormones. And then you are going to stay quiet and out of the way until the baby is born. After that, we will discuss our options. And if I refuse?" Victor smiled. It was the coldest smile she had ever seen. "Then mother's lawyers will petition for emergency custody of the baby. We have documentation of your emotional instability going back months. We have witnesses who will testify that you are unfit to be a mother. We have resources that you cannot even imagine." He leaned closer. "You can walk away from this marriage with nothing, or you can cooperate and maintain some dignity. Your choice." Eleanor stared at him. This man she had married, this man she had loved, this stranger wearing her husband's face. "I need time to think," she said quietly. "You have 24 hours, Victor replied. "Then we expect an answer." He walked out of the room without looking back. Eleanor stood alone in the living room of the house that had never felt like home. Her hands trembled. Her heart raced. The baby kicked against her ribs as if protesting the injustice of it all. 24 hours. She had 24 hours to decide whether to surrender completely or fight a battle she could not possibly win. She was about to leave when she noticed something on the side table near the door. An envelope. Plain white. Unmarked. She picked it up. Inside was a flash drive and a single piece of paper with a handwritten note. The note read, "You deserve to know the truth, but be careful who you trust. They have done this before. JT James Thornton, the Harrington family lawyer." Why would the enemy's lawyer be helping her? Eleanor tucked the envelope into her purse and walked out of the house. She did not know what was on that flash drive, but she knew with sudden certainty that everything was about to change. The flash drive contained enough information to destroy the Harrington family 3 times over. Eleanor sat in Carol's apartment, staring at the laptop screen, scrolling through file after file of meticulously organized evidence. Bank statements, wire transfers, emails, photographs, legal documents that should have been locked away in secure filing cabinets. James Thornton had not just given her ammunition, he had given her a nuclear weapon. The first folder was labeled Sabrina Cole. Eleanor opened it and felt her jaw drop. Wire transfers, Carol read over her shoulder. From Margaret Harrington to Sabrina Cole. $15,000 monthly for the past 14 months. Eleanor clicked through the documents. Every single transfer was documented with dates, amounts, and account numbers. She is paying her, Eleanor said slowly. Margaret is literally paying Sabrina to be with Victor. Carol shook her head in disbelief. The mistress is on payroll. This is insane. This is actual insanity. The second folder was labeled Victor Harrington III. Eleanor opened it and found financial records that told a very different story than the one Victor presented to the world. His investment firm was not thriving. It was hemorrhaging money. Every quarter showed losses that were quietly covered by transfers from the main Harrington family trust. He is failing, Eleanor said. His whole successful businessman persona is a lie. His mother has been propping him up for years. Carol whistled. So the golden boy is actually a financial disaster. No wonder Margaret is so desperate to control everything. If this got out, their reputation would be destroyed. The third folder stopped Eleanor cold. It was labeled Previous Victims. Inside were 6 files, 6 different women. Each file contained photographs, news clippings, and detailed timelines. The first woman was named Rebecca Walsh. She had been engaged to Victor's cousin in 2015. According to the documents, Margaret had orchestrated a campaign to destroy her reputation, planting stories about mental instability and addiction until Rebecca's fiancé broke off the engagement. Rebecca had attempted suicide 6 months later. The second woman was named Diana Peters. She had been a business rival of the Harrington family in 2017. Margaret had used her connections to spread rumors of financial impropriety until Diana's company went bankrupt. She lost everything. The third woman was named Sarah Mitchell. Eleanor stared at the name, Mitchell, her maiden name. She opened the file with trembling hands. Inside was a photograph of a man she recognized, a man she had not seen in 15 years, a man whose absence had defined her entire adult life. Her father, Alexander Mitchell. The file told a story Eleanor had never known. 15 years ago, Alexander Mitchell had been a successful entrepreneur. He had fallen in love with Eleanor's mother, had Eleanor, and had built a life that the Harrington family saw as a threat to their influence. Margaret's father had orchestrated his destruction. They had framed him for fraud. They had threatened to ruin Eleanor's future if he did not disappear. They had given him a choice. Leave your daughter, or watch her life be destroyed. He had left. But according to the documents, he had not disappeared. He had spent the past 15 years building a technology empire under a different name. He had accumulated wealth and power in secret, and he had been watching over Eleanor from a distance, waiting for the right moment to return. The final document in the file was a property deed. Frostwood Manor, the estate where Eleanor had been humiliated, the home where the Christmas gala had been held. The owner was listed as Alexander Mitchell. He owns it, Eleanor whispered. My father owns the mansion where they threw wine in my face. Carol grabbed her arm. Wait, your father, your absent deadbeat father, is secretly a billionaire who owns the Harringtons' fancy party house and has been watching over you for 15 years. Eleanor could not speak. Her entire world had just inverted. Everything she believed about her father's abandonment, everything she believed about her own worthlessness, everything she believed about being alone. It was all wrong. There was one more item in the file, a phone number with a note attached. The note said, "When you are ready, call this number. I am here. I have always been here. I am sorry I could not tell you sooner." Dad, Eleanor's hands shook so badly she could barely hold the paper. "Call him," Caro said softly. "Ellie, call him." Eleanor picked up her phone. She dialed the number. It rang twice. Then a voice answered, a voice she had not heard in 15 years but recognized immediately. A voice that made something deep inside her break open and start to heal. "Eleanor," the voice said, "my daughter, I have been waiting for this call for so long." And Eleanor, for the first time since she could remember, did not feel alone. They met at a coffee shop 3 miles from the Harrington estate. Eleanor arrived first. She chose a booth in the back corner where she could see the door. Her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she did not drink. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. 15 years. 15 years of wondering why her father had left. 15 years of believing she was not worth staying for. 15 years of building walls around her heart to protect herself from the pain of abandonment. And now he was about to walk through that door. When he did, Eleanor almost did not recognize him. The Alexander Mitchell she remembered had been a young father with dark hair and an easy smile. The man who entered the coffee shop was older, grayer, with lines around his eyes that spoke of years of worry. But his eyes were the same, warm and kind and filled with the same love she remembered from childhood bedtime stories and Saturday morning pancakes. "Eleanor," he said when he reached her booth. She did not know what to say. All the words she had rehearsed in her head vanished. All the anger and hurt and confusion tangled together until she could not separate one emotion from another. "You left," she finally managed. Her voice cracked. "You left and you never came back." Alexander slid into the booth across from her. His own eyes were wet. "I know," he said, "and I am so sorry. I have spent 15 years trying to find a way back to you. I have spent 15 years building enough power to protect you from the people who threatened to destroy us both." He reached across the table but stopped short of touching her hand. "I need to tell you everything," he said. "Will you listen?" Eleanor nodded. And so Alexander told her the truth. He told her about falling in love with her mother, about the happiness of those early years, about building a business that threatened the old money families who controlled the city. He told her about Margaret's father, about the threats, about the fabricated fraud charges that would have sent him to prison, about the promise that if he disappeared, Eleanor would be left alone to live her life. "I thought I was protecting you," Alexander said. "I thought if I stayed away, they would leave you alone. I did not know that my leaving would lead you straight into their trap." He explained how he had watched from a distance as Eleanor grew up, how he had followed her achievements in law school, how his heart had broken when she married Victor Harrington, and he realized she had walked directly into the family that had destroyed him. "I wanted to warn you," he said, "but I was afraid that contacting you would put you in danger. So I watched, and I waited, and I built an empire powerful enough to protect you when the time came." He told her about buying Frostwood Manor, about placing people inside the Harrington organization who reported to him, about the files that James Thornton had been secretly compiling for years. "James works for me," Alexander said. "He has been documenting everything. He lost his sister to Margaret's cruelty 10 years ago, and he has been waiting for someone brave enough to use the information he gathered." Eleanor's head was spinning. It was too much to process. Too many revelations. Too many years of pain recontextualized in a single conversation. "Why now?" she asked. "Why reveal yourself now?" Alexander's expression hardened. "Because I watched them throw wine in your face. I watched your husband blame you for being attacked. I watched Margaret begin the same campaign of destruction she has used on 6 other women." He leaned forward. "I will not watch them take your child, Eleanor. I will not stand by while they break you the way they tried to break me." Eleanor felt tears streaming down her face. She did not bother wiping them away. "What do I do?" she whispered. "I have nothing. No money, no power, no way to fight them." Alexander shook his head. You have everything you need. You have evidence that will destroy them. You have allies they do not know about. And you have something they do not. What? You have a legal mind that graduated top of its class, Alexander said. You have spent 3 years observing their weaknesses, and you have nothing left to lose. He reached across the table, and this time he did take her hand. I cannot fight this battle for you, he said. I can give you resources. I can give you information. I can give you access. But you have to be the one who decides how to use them. Why? Eleanor asked. Because you are not the helpless woman they think you are, Alexander replied. You are Eleanor Mitchell. You are my daughter, and you are capable of destroying them yourself. Eleanor looked at her father, at this stranger who was also the man she had spent 15 years missing, at the empire he had built in the shadows, at the hand he was offering her now. She thought about everything she had lost, her career, her self-respect, her belief in her own worth. She thought about the baby growing inside her, about the life she wanted to provide, about the woman she wanted her child to know, and she made a decision. Tell me what I need to know, she said. Alexander smiled. It was the same smile she remembered from childhood. That is my girl, he said. The next week was the most intense of Eleanor's life. She moved into one of Alexander's properties, a modest townhouse far enough from the Harrington estate that she could work without being watched. The first night, she stood in the empty living room and felt something she had not felt in 3 years. Freedom. No Margaret watching her every move. No Victor criticizing her every word. No servants reporting her activities to people who wished her harm. Just silence. Just space. Just the chance to breathe. Carol arrived the next morning with 2 suitcases, a laptop, and enough coffee to fuel a small army. I took a leave of absence, Carol announced, dropping her bags in the hallway. Told my boss it was a family emergency, which technically it is. You are family, and this is definitely an emergency. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. You did not have to do that. Girl, Carol said, pulling her into a hug. I have been waiting 3 years to help you burn these people to the ground. You think I am going to miss this? Not a chance. James Thornton arrived an hour later with 3 boxes of documents and a hard drive containing 10 years of surveillance. Everything I have is yours now, he said, setting the boxes on the dining room table. Bank records, phone logs, email archives, witness statements. I have been building this case since the day Margaret destroyed my sister. Eleanor looked at him. What happened to your sister? James was quiet for a moment, his jaw tightened. Her name was Patricia, he said finally. She worked for a company that competed with one of the Harrington subsidiaries. Margaret spread rumors that she was embezzling, planted evidence, got her arrested. He paused. The charges were eventually dropped, but by then it did not matter. Patricia lost everything, her job, her reputation, her marriage. She spent 2 years fighting depression. She almost did not survive. Eleanor felt cold rage building in her chest. How many women has Margaret done this to? James opened one of the boxes and pulled out a thick folder. 6 that I know of, he said. Probably more. She has been doing this for decades. Anyone who threatens her control, anyone who challenges her authority, anyone who simply gets in her way, she destroys them all. Eleanor took the folder and opened it. 6 names, 6 photographs, 6 lives systematically dismantled by one woman's cruelty. Rebecca Walsh, Diana Peters, Patricia Thornton, Sarah Chen, Michelle Rodriguez, and at the bottom of the list, a name that made Eleanor's heart stop. Catherine Mitchell. That is your mother, James said quietly. Eleanor stared at the photograph. A young woman with Eleanor's eyes and Eleanor's smile, standing in front of a small bakery with a hopeful expression. What happened to her? James hesitated. Alexander should tell you that story. It is not my place. Eleanor set the folder down. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was steady. Tell me everything else, she said. I want to know every crime Margaret has committed, every lie she has told, every person she has hurt. And so they began. Every morning, Eleanor woke at 6 and reviewed the evidence. Every afternoon, she strategized with Caro and James. Every evening, she spoke with her father, learning the details of his surveillance and adding pieces to the puzzle. The picture that emerged was damning. Margaret Harrington was not just a social climber and a bully, she was a criminal. She had embezzled $2.3 million from the Harrington Children's Cancer Foundation over the past 8 years. The foundation was named after her daughter Emily, who had died of leukemia at age 7. Victor's sister, a child whose memory Margaret had exploited to steal from other dying children. When Eleanor discovered the full extent of the theft, she had to put the documents down and walk away. She stole from children with cancer, she said to Caro, in her dead daughter's name. What kind of person does that? Caro shook her head. The kind of person who deserves everything that is coming to her. The evidence was irrefutable. Bank transfers, falsified reports, hidden accounts. James had documented everything with the precision of a man who had waited a decade for this moment. This will destroy her, Caro said as they reviewed the files. Her reputation, her social standing, her legacy, everything she cares about. Eleanor nodded, but we need to be strategic about how we release it. If we go to the media now, their lawyers will bury it. They will claim the documents are forged. They will discredit us before anyone even looks at the evidence. She stood and walked to the window. We need a venue they cannot control, an audience they cannot manipulate, a moment so public that no amount of money can make it disappear. James looked up from his laptop. The New Year's Eve charity gala. 500 guests, live streamed for charity donations. It is Margaret's crown jewel event, the one night of the year she cannot cancel or control. Eleanor felt a cold smile spread across her face. When is it? 6 days from now, 6 days. She had 6 days to prepare the most important presentation of her life. They worked around the clock. Caro tracked down Sabrina's former assistant, a woman named Brittany, who had been fired after refusing to lie about Sabrina's finances. When they met, Brittany was angry enough to burn down the world. She made my life hell for 2 years, Brittany said. She screamed at me for buying the wrong brand of water. She threw a phone at my head because I scheduled a meeting 5 minutes late. She told everyone I was stealing from her when I quit. She leaned forward. But you want to know the real joke? Her entire life is fake. Everything, the apartment she claims to own, rented, the car, leased. The designer clothes? Borrowed and returned after photo shoots. She has $400,000 in credit card debt and her bank account is always overdrawn. Caro's eyes widened. How does she afford anything? Brittany laughed bitterly. She does not. Margaret Harrington pays for everything, $15,000 a month. I saw the deposits myself. She pulled out her phone and showed them screenshots. I saved everything, Brittany said. Every receipt, every bank statement, every text message where Sabrina bragged about scamming her followers. I knew someday I would need proof. Eleanor looked at the evidence. It was exactly what they needed. She made me sign an NDA, Brittany added. But you know what? I do not care anymore. She treated me like garbage for 2 years. She deserves whatever is coming to her. James brought in his contacts from the police department. A detective named Rachel, one of Caro's friends from college, agreed to help coordinate the timing. The arrests need to happen at the gala, Rachel said during their planning meeting, in front of witnesses, before the Harrington lawyers can get an injunction. Can you make that happen? Eleanor asked. Rachel nodded. I have been building a case against Margaret Harrington for 3 years. Every time I get close, someone makes a phone call and the investigation gets shut down. She has connections in the department, in the prosecutor's office, in City Hall. She leaned forward. But if you give me irrefutable evidence in front of 500 witnesses and a live stream audience, there is no phone call that can make that disappear. Alexander provided the technical support. His team would override the gala's audiovisual system at the critical moment. They would broadcast the evidence to every screen in the room and to the thousands watching online. We have access to the venue's network, Alexander explained during one of their video calls. My security team has been monitoring the Harrington systems for months. When you give the signal, we will take control of every screen in the building. But there was one more element Eleanor needed, something personal, something that would cut through the legal jargon and financial documents and touch the hearts of everyone watching. She needed to tell her story. On the 5th day, Eleanor sat down in front of a camera and recorded her statement. Caro handled the lighting. James adjusted the microphone. Alexander watched through the video feed, his expression unreadable. Eleanor took a deep breath and began. 3 years ago, I fell in love with a man named Victor Harrington. He was charming. He was successful. He made me feel like I was the most important person in the world. She paused. I did not know that his mother had chosen me specifically because I had no family, no connections, no one to protect me. I did not know that she saw me as a tool to produce an heir and nothing more. Her voice steadied. I gave up my career for that marriage. I was a lawyer, top of my class, on track to make partner before I was 35. But Margaret Harrington told me that a proper wife does not work, that my job was to support my husband and produce children, that my ambitions were selfish and inappropriate. She looked directly into the camera, and I believed her. I made myself smaller and smaller to fit into the mold she created. I stopped seeing my friends. I stopped having opinions. I stopped being myself. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. Then, 2 weeks ago, I stood in a ballroom while a woman threw wine in my face. My husband blamed me for being attacked. My mother-in-law called me unstable. And I realized something. Her voice grew stronger. I had spent 3 years being small, being quiet, being good, being the wife everyone wanted me to be. And it got me humiliated in front of 300 people on Christmas Eve. She paused. I am done being small. I am done being quiet. And I am done letting people like Margaret Harrington destroy women's lives without consequence. She looked directly into the lens. My name is Eleanor Mitchell. I am the daughter of Alexander Mitchell. I am going to be a mother, and I will never be small again. When she finished recording, Kara was crying openly. James was nodding with grim satisfaction. And Alexander, watching from the doorway of his office hundreds of miles away, looked at his daughter with overwhelming pride. "Are you ready?" he asked. Eleanor stood. She smoothed her dress. She lifted her chin. "I have been ready my whole life," she said. "I just forgot for a while." The first blow came 2 days before the gala. Eleanor woke to her phone exploding with notifications. Texts from numbers she did not recognize. Emails from journalists requesting comment. Social media mentions that multiplied faster than she could count. She opened the first message and felt her blood run cold. Sabrina had released a video. In the video, Sabrina sat in what appeared to be a therapist's office. Her makeup was subtle, her voice trembled. Tears streamed down her cheeks with practiced precision. "I have been the victim of harassment," Sabrina said to the camera. "For months, Eleanor Harrington has been sending me threatening messages. She has been stalking me online. She has been trying to destroy my life because she is jealous of my relationship with her husband." Eleanor watched in horror as Sabrina wove lie after lie into a tapestry of false victimhood. "I tried to be kind to her," Sabrina continued. "I tried to help her through her pregnancy. I brought her tea when she felt sick. I offered to plan her baby shower, and she attacked me at the Christmas gala." Sabrina dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "She threw herself at me. The wine spilling was her fault, not mine. I have been so traumatized by this experience. I cannot sleep. I cannot eat. I am afraid to leave my house because I do not know what she might do next." The video ended with Sabrina looking directly into the camera, her eyes wet with manufactured tears. "I am not the villain here," she said. "I am just a woman trying to live my life while another woman tries to destroy it." The comments were already flooding in. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. Poor Sabrina. She seems so genuine. I always thought there was more to the story. Eleanor seems unhinged. Classic jealous wife behavior. Someone gives Sabrina a hug. She is clearly suffering. Carol called within minutes. Her voice was tight with controlled fury. "Have you seen it?" "I am watching it now," Eleanor said. Her voice was numb. "That is not all. Check the news." Eleanor switched to a news site. The headline made her stomach drop. Disgraced businessman Alexander Mitchell revealed as father of Harrington scandal wife. Secret fortune and hidden identity exposed. The article was devastating. It painted Alexander as a con man who had abandoned his daughter and was now trying to manipulate her for his own purposes. It suggested that Eleanor's recent behavior was the result of her father's corrupting influence. It quoted anonymous sources close to the Harrington family who expressed concern about Eleanor's mental state. "How?" Eleanor whispered. "How did they find out?" "Someone talked," Caro said. "Someone on our side gave them information." Eleanor felt the floor dropping away beneath her. They had been so careful, so meticulous. And somehow Margaret had gotten ahead of them. Her phone rang. Victor's number. She answered without thinking. I warned you, Victor said. His voice dripped with smug satisfaction. You should have taken the deal when you had the chance. Now it is too late. What did you do? We protected ourselves, Victor replied. Did you really think we did not know what you were planning? Mother has eyes everywhere. She has known about your little scheme for days. Eleanor's chest tightened. The custody hearing is tomorrow morning, Victor continued. Emergency session. The judge is a friend of Mother's. By this time tomorrow, you will have nothing. No money, no reputation, no baby. He paused. Actually, let me correct that. You will have one thing. You will have the knowledge that you tried to fight us and you lost. That should keep you warm at night. He laughed. Enjoy your last night of freedom, Eleanor. The line went dead. Eleanor sat frozen. The phone slipped from her fingers and clattered against the floor. She felt like she was drowning, like the water was closing over her head and there was nothing she could grab onto. 24 hours. She had 24 hours before they took her baby. The baby kicked hard against her ribs, as if sensing her distress. Eleanor pressed her hand against the movement and tried to breathe. Caro arrived within an hour. James came shortly after. Alexander joined them via a video call from his office, his face grave on the laptop screen. They sat in Eleanor's living room and faced the disaster together. How bad is it? Eleanor asked. James pulled up his tablet. Sabrina's video has 12 million views and counting. The article about your father is being picked up by every major outlet. Social media is turning against you. The narrative they wanted is spreading. And the custody hearing? Scheduled for 9 tomorrow morning, James said. Judge Harrison. He has been on the Harrington payroll for 15 years. Even with the best lawyers in the world, we cannot get a fair hearing in his courtroom. Silence fell over the room. Caro put her head in her hands. There has to be something we can do. There has to be. Alexander spoke from the screen. The gala is tomorrow night. If we can delay the custody hearing until after the exposure, the entire situation changes. But Eleanor shook her head. She had been a lawyer. She understood how emergency custody hearings worked. They scheduled it for 9 in the morning, she said. The gala does not start until 8 in the evening. By the time we expose anything, I will have already lost. More silence. Eleanor looked at her father's face on the screen. At James, who had risked everything to help her. At Caro, who had never once abandoned her. She thought about the baby moving inside her. About the life she was fighting for. About everything she had already survived. And something inside her shifted. For 3 years, she had been playing defense, reacting to whatever the Harringtons threw at her, trying to survive rather than fight, hoping that if she was good enough, quiet enough, small enough, they would eventually leave her alone. That strategy had gotten her nowhere. We split up, she said. Her voice was calm now. Certain. Everyone looked at her. James, you go to the courthouse tomorrow morning. File every motion you can think of. Procedural challenges, constitutional objections, anything that will slow them down. James nodded. I can buy you a few hours. Maybe more if I am creative. Dad, Eleanor continued, make sure everything is ready for the gala. The moment I give the signal, you broadcast everything. Do not wait for confirmation. Do not hesitate. The second you see me nod, you burn it all down. Alexander's jaw tightened on the screen. I will be ready. Caro, Eleanor turned to her friend, I need you to find Brittany. Get her to the gala. We need a live witness, not just documents. Someone who can look the camera in the eye and tell the truth about Sabrina Cole. Done, Caro said. And you, James asked, what will you do? Eleanor stood. She walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Margaret Harrington was celebrating, drinking champagne, congratulating herself on another successful campaign of destruction. She had no idea what was coming. I am going to do what I should have done from the beginning, Eleanor said. I am going to stop playing defense. She turned to face them. I am going to Margaret's house tonight, and I am going to make her an offer she cannot refuse. Margaret Harrington's private study smelled like old money and fresh flowers. Eleanor stood in the doorway, taking in the room that represented everything she had spent 3 years trying to fit into. Mahogany bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes that had never been read, Oil paintings of ancestors who had made their fortune through exploitation and cruelty. A massive desk where Margaret conducted her campaigns of destruction. The security guards had tried to stop her at the gate. Eleanor had smiled at them and said 4 words. Tell her I am here. 5 minutes later, the gates opened. Now she faced her enemy across 10 feet of Persian carpet that probably cost more than most people's houses. Margaret sat behind her desk, her expression a mixture of surprise and contempt. She wore a silk robe over her nightgown. Her gray hair was loose around her shoulders. Without her armor of designer clothes and professional makeup, she looked older, smaller, almost human. Almost. You have some nerve, Margaret said, coming to my home after everything you have done. Eleanor did not sit. She stood with her hands folded over her pregnant belly and her spine straight. I came to make you an offer, she said. Margaret laughed. It was a cold, dismissive sound. An offer? You have nothing to offer. By tomorrow morning, you will have nothing at all. The judge is prepared. The witnesses are lined up. Your father's reputation is destroyed. And that viral video of your friend Sabrina has turned public opinion completely against you. She leaned back in her chair, satisfaction spreading across her face. You should have accepted Victor's terms when you had the chance. Now it is too late. You are right, Eleanor said. Her voice was calm, conversational. By tomorrow morning, the custody hearing will have stripped me of my rights. Your lawyers will have painted me as an unstable woman, unfit to raise a child. And you will have won. She paused. But tomorrow night is the New Year's Eve gala. Something flickered in Margaret's eyes. Caution, maybe, or the first hint of fear. What about it, Margaret asked. Eleanor smiled. It was not a warm smile. I have evidence, she said, of everything. The payments to Sabrina, $15,000 a month for 14 months. I have the bank records. I have the wire transfers. I have screenshots of her text messages bragging about the arrangement. She took a step closer. I have evidence of Victor's financial failures. Every quarterly loss, every bailout from the family trust, every lie he has told to investors and partners. His entire career is built on fraud, and you have been covering it up for years. Margaret's expression did not change, but Eleanor saw her hands tighten on the arms of her chair. I have documentation of the 6 women you have destroyed over the past 15 years, Eleanor continued. Rebecca Walsh, Diana Peters, Patricia Thornton, Sarah Chen, Michelle Rodriguez, my mother. She paused to let the names sink in. Some of them are willing to testify. They have been waiting for someone to give them a platform. They have been waiting for someone brave enough to tell the truth. Margaret's face remained impassive, but Eleanor could see the calculations happening behind those cold eyes. And most importantly, Eleanor said, taking another step forward, I have evidence of the $2.3 million you stole from the Children's Cancer Foundation, named after your dead daughter. Margaret's face went white. That is a lie, she whispered. We both know it is not, Eleanor replied. I have the bank transfers. I have the falsified reports. I have testimony from accountants who helped you hide it. I have everything. 8 years of theft, $2.3 million, stolen from dying children in Emily's name. The words hung in the air between them. Tomorrow night, Eleanor continued, 500 people will gather at your gala. The social elite of this city. The people whose opinions you value above all else. They will be there to celebrate your legacy, to honor your charitable work, to admire the woman they think you are. She leaned forward. And unless we come to an agreement right now, every single one of them will learn exactly who you really are. Live, on camera, in front of thousands of online viewers who will share the footage with millions more. Margaret's hands trembled. She gripped the edge of her desk to steady herself. What do you want, she asked. Her voice had lost its usual confidence. Eleanor laid out her terms. First, you drop the custody suit, completely and permanently. You call the judge tonight and tell him the hearing is canceled. Second, you give me a fair divorce settlement, half of everything Victor has, plus child support. I want it in writing by noon tomorrow. Third, you and your family stay away from me and my child for the rest of your lives. No contact, no surveillance, no more games. She paused. In exchange, I will not release the evidence at the gala. I will take my settlement and disappear. You will never hear from me again. Margaret stared at her. Eleanor could see the calculations happening behind those cold eyes, the weighing of options, the assessment of risks. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "And if I refuse," Margaret asked. "Then tomorrow night your entire world burns down around you," Eleanor said. "Your reputation, your social standing, your charity work, your friendships, your legacy. Everything you have spent 60 years building will be destroyed in 60 seconds." She leaned forward until she could see her own reflection in Margaret's eyes. "And the best part? You will not be able to stop it. The evidence is already in place. The systems are already programmed. Even if you have me arrested tonight, even if you kill me, it will still happen. My father is watching this conversation right now through the camera on my necklace. The moment anything happens to me, he broadcasts everything." She straightened. "The only way to prevent it is to give me what I am asking for." Silence stretched between them. Margaret's face cycled through emotions: rage, fear, calculation, hatred, and something else. Something Eleanor had never seen on that face before: respect. Finally, Margaret spoke. "You think you have won," she said. Her voice was quiet, dangerous, "but you do not understand who you are dealing with." She stood and walked around the desk until she was face to face with Eleanor. "I destroyed your father 15 years ago," Margaret said. "I made him choose between his freedom and his daughter, and he ran like a coward." She smiled. "I know Alexander Mitchell is back. I know he is behind all of this. I know he bought Frostwood Manor and placed spies in my organization and has been watching me for years. Do you think I am stupid? Do you think I did not notice?" Eleanor felt ice forming in her stomach. "The fraud charges that were dropped 15 years ago can be reopened," Margaret continued. "I have friends in the Department of Justice, friends who owe me favors. Your father's new empire? I can have it investigated, audited, destroyed. The reputation he rebuilt? I can tear it down in a week." She leaned closer until Eleanor could smell her perfume. "Expensive, Misa. Suffocating. Everything he has," Margaret whispered. "Everything you have. Your evidence, your plans, your hope. I can take it all." She stepped back and crossed her arms. "So here is my counteroffer. You walk away right now. You give up the baby willingly. You disappear from my son's life forever. And maybe, just maybe, I will let your father keep his freedom." Eleanor felt fear grip her chest. Margaret was not bluffing. She had the connections. She had the power. She had destroyed people before, and she would do it again. The room felt smaller. The air felt thinner. For one terrible moment, Eleanor wanted to surrender, to accept defeat, to take whatever scraps Margaret was willing to throw her and disappear into obscurity. But then the baby kicked, one strong, determined kick right against her ribs, as if her daughter was saying, "Fight, do not give up, we are in this together." And Eleanor remembered something. She was not the same woman who had cowered in a bathroom covered in wine. She was not the same woman who had believed she deserved to be small. She was not the same woman who had accepted cruelty because she thought she had no choice. That woman was gone. "No," Eleanor said. Margaret's eyes widened. "No, no." Eleanor's voice did not waver. "You destroyed my father once because he was alone, because he had no one to stand with him, because he thought surrendering would protect me." She stepped closer until they were inches apart. "But I am not alone anymore. I have my father. I have my friends. I have evidence that will destroy you. And I have something you will never understand." "What is that?" Margaret asked. "I have nothing left to lose," Eleanor said. "You have taken everything from me already. My career, my self-respect, my belief in my own worth. There is nothing more you can threaten me with." She smiled. It was the smile of a woman who had finally found her power. "But you have everything to lose. Your reputation, your social standing, your freedom. Tomorrow night, I am going to take all of it. And there is nothing you can do to stop me." She turned and walked toward the door. Margaret's voice followed her, sharp with fury. "You will regret this. You will lose everything." Eleanor paused at the threshold. She looked back over her shoulder. "I already lost everything," she said. "That is what makes me dangerous." She walked out into the cold night air. Her hands were shaking, her heart was pounding. Snow fell gently around her, catching the light from the mansion windows. Behind her, she heard Margaret screaming for security, for lawyers, for anyone who could stop what was coming. But it was too late. Eleanor Mitchell was done being small, and tomorrow night, the whole world would know it. The New Year's Eve gala was even more spectacular than the Christmas event had been. Frostwood Manor glittered with 1,000 lights. Ice sculptures towered in every corner, carved into shapes of angels and snowflakes in champagne bottles. A 20-piece orchestra played as 500 of the city's most powerful people mingled beneath crystal chandeliers that had witnessed 2 centuries of secrets and scandals. Eleanor arrived at 8:15. She wore red, not modest blue like before, not the soft, forgettable colors Margaret had always insisted upon. Red, deep crimson red, the color of blood, the color of wine, the color of revenge. Her dress hugged her pregnant body like armor. The fabric caught the light with every step, making her impossible to ignore. Her hair was swept up to show the line of her neck. Her makeup was flawless. Her grandmother's diamond earrings sparkled at her ears, a reminder of the family Margaret had tried to erase. She looked like a woman who had come to war. The reaction was immediate. Heads turned, whispers erupted. Phones emerged to capture the moment. Is that Eleanor Harrington? What is she doing here? I thought she was banned from Harrington events. Did you see Sabrina's video? She is supposed to be crazy. Eleanor did not care. She walked through the crowd with her head high, making eye contact with everyone who stared. Let them look. Let them wonder. Let them see. She was done hiding. Kara waited near the entrance, Brittany beside her. Both women were dressed elegantly, blending into the crowd while staying close enough to provide support. James just texted, Kara said quietly. He managed to delay the custody hearing until 3 this afternoon. The judge was furious, but James filed so many motions that they had to reschedule. 3 o'clock, Eleanor said. By then, this will all be over. She scanned the room and found what she was looking for. Alexander, watching through one of the security cameras mounted near the stage. His face was not visible to anyone else, but Eleanor knew he was there, waiting, ready. Everything was in place. Eleanor found her position near the center of the ballroom, directly in front of the main stage where Margaret would give her annual speech. She stood still and waited. Margaret noticed her almost immediately. The older woman was holding court near the champagne table, surrounded by admirers and sycophants. When she saw Eleanor, her face went pale, then red, then carefully neutral. She whispered something to a nearby security guard who started moving toward Eleanor. But before he could reach her, Victor appeared. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, a tremor in his hands, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. The smug confidence from their phone call had evaporated completely. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. His voice was too loud. Several guests turned to watch. Eleanor smiled. "I came to support the charity. Victor, is that not what good citizens do?" "You need to leave," he said. "Mother is calling security." "Let her," Eleanor replied. "I am not going anywhere." Victor grabbed her arm. His grip was tight enough to bruise. "I am warning you," he hissed. "If you do not leave right now, I will." "You will what?" Eleanor asked calmly. "Hit a pregnant woman in front of 500 witnesses?" "Go ahead. I am sure that will play well on the evening news." Victor's face contorted with rage, but he released her arm. He knew she was right. Sabrina pushed through the crowd to join them. She wore gold tonight, her hair piled high, her expression a mixture of confusion and anger. "This is harassment," Sabrina said. "I will have you arrested. I will call the police. I will." "You should leave," Eleanor said quietly. Sabrina blinked. "What?" Eleanor looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who had thrown wine in her face. This woman who had tried to steal her husband. This woman who had participated in a campaign to destroy her life. She felt nothing but pity. "What is about to happen will not be kind to you," Eleanor said. "If you leave now, you might be able to salvage something. Your dignity, at least." Sabrina sneered. "What is about to happen is you being escorted out in handcuffs. The police are already on their way. I called them myself. Then they will arrive just in time for the show," Eleanor replied. The orchestra fell silent. A spotlight illuminated the stage. Margaret climbed the steps to the microphone. her silver gown catching the light with every movement. She looked every inch the society queen she had spent 60 years becoming. "Welcome," Margaret said into the microphone. Her voice was smooth and practiced, betraying nothing of the fear Eleanor had seen in her eyes the night before. "Welcome to our annual New Year's Eve celebration." She launched into her speech. The same platitudes as always: charity, community, legacy, family. Eleanor waited. "Tonight we gather to celebrate the work of the Harrington Children's Cancer Foundation," Margaret continued. "As many of you know, this foundation was established in memory of my daughter Emily, who was taken from us far too soon." She dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. Emily was only 7 years old when she lost her battle with leukemia, but her spirit lives on through this foundation, through the children we have helped, through the lives we have saved. Several guests nodded sympathetically. Some wiped away tears of their own. "I am proud to announce," Margaret said, "that this year the foundation raised over $3 million for pediatric cancer research." $3 million because of your generosity. Applause rippled through the ballroom. Eleanor caught her father's eye through one of the security cameras. She nodded once. The screens behind Margaret flickered. Margaret faltered. "What?" She looked back at the screens. They had changed. Instead of the foundation's logo and photos of smiling children, they now displayed a document, a bank statement, a wire transfer from Margaret Harrington's personal account to an offshore holding company. $200,000. Dated 3 years ago. Someone in the crowd gasped. Margaret spun around. "What is this? Turn it off. Turn it off now." But the screens kept changing. More documents, more transfers, more evidence. The total climbed higher and higher. 400,000, 800,000, 1.5 million. The voice that filled the room was Eleanor's, recorded but clear. "Ladies and gentlemen," the recording said, "you have been told that Margaret Harrington is a pillar of this community, a champion of charitable causes, a woman who has dedicated her life to helping others." The screens displayed the full accounting. The truth is very different. $2.3 million. Over 8 years. Stolen from the Harrington Children's Cancer Foundation. Stolen from dying children. Stolen in the name of Margaret's own dead daughter. The room erupted. People shouted. People cried. People pulled out their phones to record the chaos. Margaret stood frozen at the microphone, her face a mask of horror. "This is a lie," Margaret screamed. "This is all lies. Someone has forged these documents. Someone is trying to destroy me." But Eleanor was not done. The screens changed again. Wire transfers from Margaret Harrington to Sabrina Cole. $15,000 monthly. 14 months of payments. "Sabrina Cole is not Victor Harrington's girlfriend," the recording continued. "She is an employee, paid by Margaret Harrington to destroy her son's marriage." Sabrina screamed, "No, that is a lie. The screens showed screenshots of text messages. Sabrina bragging about her arrangement. Sabrina laughing about how easy it was to manipulate public opinion. Sabrina celebrating the Christmas gala humiliation. "Got the pregnant cow right in the face," one message read. "15,000 a month is not enough for this. I deserve a bonus." The crowd turned to stare at Sabrina. Their expressions had transformed from sympathy to disgust. But the evidence was irrefutable. Every transfer, every date, every amount, every damning word. All documented, all displayed for 500 witnesses and thousands of online viewers. Sabrina tried to run. A security guard blocked her path. Not one of Margaret's guards, one of Alexander's. Victor stood frozen, staring at the screens. The color had drained from his face completely. The screens changed one final time. Photographs of 6 women, 6 victims, 6 lives destroyed by Margaret Harrington over the past 15 years. "I am not her first victim," the recording said. "There are 6 other women, Rafish's rivals, anyone who threatened her control. She destroyed their lives, their careers, their families, and until tonight they had no way to tell their stories." Video testimonies appeared. Real women, real pain, real consequences. Rebecca Walsh, who had attempted suicide after Margaret destroyed her engagement. Diana Peters, whose company Margaret had bankrupted with false rumors. Patricia Thornton, speaking through tears about the harassment that had driven her to the edge. And others, so many others. A chorus of voices that had been silenced for decades finally given the chance to speak. The room was chaos now. Sirens could be heard outside. Real sirens, not the theatrical ones from movies. Real police officers were arriving. The security team that Alexander controlled had already locked the exits. Margaret tried to flee. Two officers intercepted her before she could reach the door. "Margaret Harrington," one of them said, "you are under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." "No," Margaret screamed. "No, you cannot do this. I am Margaret Harrington. I am." The handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists. For a moment, she looked at Eleanor across the ballroom. Their eyes met, and in Margaret's gaze, Eleanor saw something she had never seen before. Defeat. Victor ran toward the service entrance. More officers were waiting. "Victor Harrington, you are under arrest for financial fraud and conspiracy to commit fraud." "This is a mistake," Victor shouted. "Call my lawyers. Call someone. Do something." But no one moved to help him. The people who had spent years cultivating his friendship watched in silence as he was led away. Not one of them lifted a finger. Sabrina was arrested next, sobbing uncontrollably. Her carefully constructed image collapsed in real time as the cameras recorded every tear, every desperate plea, every moment of her spectacular downfall. "Please," she cried, "please, I did not mean it. It was Margaret's idea. Everything was Margaret's idea. I just did what she told me to do." Her words were broadcast to thousands of viewers who had once believed her victimhood video. Now they watched her confess her crimes in front of the world. Eleanor watched it all from the center of the ballroom. Then she walked to the stage. The crowd parted for her. No one tried to stop her. No one said a word. She climbed the steps slowly, her red dress catching the light, her pregnant belly leading the way. She picked up the microphone from where Margaret had dropped it. 500 faces stared up at her. Thousands more watched through screens around the world. For a long moment, Eleanor said nothing. She just stood there, letting the silence build, letting the weight of what had just happened settle over the room. Then she spoke. "2 weeks ago," she said, her voice steady, "I stood in this room while a glass of wine was thrown in my face. My husband blamed me for being attacked. My mother-in-law called me unstable. 300 people watched and did nothing." She paused. "I believed them. I believed I was the problem. I believed I deserved to be small." Her voice grew stronger. "I believed that if I was quiet enough, good enough, small enough, eventually they would accept me. Eventually they would love me. Eventually I would be enough." She shook her head. "I was wrong, and I spent 3 years of my life learning that lesson." She looked directly into the cameras. "To every woman watching this, to every woman who has been told she is too emotional, too sensitive, too difficult, to every woman who has made herself smaller to fit into someone else's idea of what she should be." Her voice rang through the silent ballroom. "Look at what they do when we fight back. Look at how terrified they are. Look at how quickly their empire crumbles when we refuse to be silent anymore." She lifted her chin. "My name is Eleanor Mitchell. I am the daughter of Alexander Mitchell. I am going to be a mother." She placed one hand on her pregnant belly and smiled. "And I will never be small again." 3 months later, Eleanor sat in the nursery of her new home and watched her daughter sleep. Carolyn Grace Mitchell, named after the best friend who had never abandoned her, born healthy and perfect on a cold February morning. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a full head of dark hair, and eyes that already showed her mother's determination. Eleanor touched the baby's cheek gently and felt her heart expand in ways she had never imagined possible. She had thought she knew what love was. She had thought she understood sacrifice and devotion and the fierce protective instinct that drove people to do extraordinary things. She had been wrong. This was love. This tiny person breathing softly in the dim light of the nursery. This small, warm weight in her arms. This miracle she had fought so hard to protect. Everything she had endured, every humiliation and betrayal and moment of despair had been worth it for this. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind. Margaret's trial had dominated the news for weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, wire transfers, falsified reports, testimony from accountants and victims and whistleblowers who had waited years for this moment. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, tax evasion, witness intimidation. The judge sentenced her to 12 years in federal prison. 12 years, Caro had said when they heard the verdict. She will be almost 80 when she gets out. If she survives that long. Eleanor had felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just a quiet sense of closure. Margaret Harrington could not hurt anyone anymore. That was enough. Victor had pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for cooperation. He had testified against his mother, detailing decades of fraud and manipulation and criminal conspiracy. The man who had once told Eleanor she would never survive without him was sentenced to 18 months in a minimum security facility. His business ventures collapsed. His political ambitions dissolved. His social standing evaporated. The last Eleanor heard, he was living in a small apartment and working at his cousin's insurance firm, waiting for his prison sentence to begin. She had not spoken to him since the night of the gala. She did not intend to ever speak to him again. Sabrina's downfall had been perhaps the most dramatic. The night of the gala, her followers abandoned her by the millions. 2.3 million people unfollowed her accounts in less than 24 hours. Brand deals evaporated. Sponsorships vanished. Lawsuit after lawsuit piled up from companies demanding the return of money and products she had falsely promoted. The woman who had once bragged about her luxury lifestyle was last seen leaving a bankruptcy hearing. Her designer clothes traded for discount store basics. Her perfect makeup replaced by the exhausted face of someone who had lost everything. Eleanor had watched the footage online. She had expected to feel satisfaction. Instead, she felt only the hollow recognition that Sabrina had been just another victim of Margaret's manipulation, a tool used and discarded. It did not excuse what she had done, but it explained it. The divorce settlement had been more than fair. Eleanor's lawyers, supported by her father's resources, had negotiated full custody, generous child support, and a substantial portion of the Harrington assets. Victor had not even bothered to fight. He was too busy trying to save himself. Eleanor used part of the settlement to establish a foundation for women escaping controlling relationships. She named it the Mitchell Foundation. Her father donated the initial funding. Within weeks, they had received thousands of applications for assistance. She was also writing a book, Small No More, a guide to reclaiming your power. Her agent said publishers were fighting over it. Her story had touched something universal in people who had ever felt diminished by someone they trusted. But those were daytime things. Right now, in the quiet of the nursery, none of that mattered. Only Caroline mattered. Only this moment. Only the soft rise and fall of her daughter's breathing. The door opened quietly. Alexander stepped into the room. He visited every week now, sometimes more. He was learning how to be a grandfather after 15 years of being a ghost. It was awkward sometimes, painful sometimes, but they were figuring it out together. "She is beautiful," Alexander whispered, looking at the sleeping baby. "She is," Eleanor agreed. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside the window, snow fell gently, coating the world in white. "I want you to know," Alexander said finally, "I am proud of you, not because of what you accomplished, but because of who you are." Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. She had spent so many years believing she was not enough, believing she needed to be smaller, quieter, more agreeable to be worthy of love. She did not believe that anymore. "Thank you," she said, "for being there when I needed you, even if it took 15 years. Alexander smiled sadly. "I will spend the rest of my life making up for those years, if you will let me." Eleanor looked at her daughter, at this perfect tiny person who would never know what it felt like to be abandoned by her grandfather. Who would grow up knowing she was loved and protected and valued? She would let him. Not because she owed him, but because family was not about the past. It was about what you built going forward. Carol arrived an hour later with takeout and wine and a stuffed elephant that was bigger than the baby. "I could not decide between sizes," Carol explained, wrestling the enormous toy through the doorway. "So I went with the one that makes a statement." Eleanor laughed. It was a sound that still surprised her sometimes. For so long, laughter had felt like a foreign language. Now it came easily, naturally, like breathing. They ate dinner together, Eleanor and Caro and Alexander. Three people who had found their way to each other through years of separation and silence. Three people who were building something new from the ruins of the past. After dinner, Caro helped Eleanor put Caroline down for the night. The baby fussed briefly, then settled into sleep with the unconscious trust of an infant who had never known fear. She is going to be fierce, Caro said, looking down at the sleeping baby. I can already tell. She has that look in her eyes, the Eleanor look. What look is that? Eleanor asked. The one that says, do not mess with me or I will destroy everything you love, Caro replied. It is very intimidating coming from someone who weighs 8 pounds. Eleanor laughed. She is going to be herself, whatever that turns out to be. She looked around the nursery, at the soft yellow walls, at the books she had already started collecting, at the rocking chair where she would read stories and sing lullabies and teach her daughter that her voice mattered. This was not the life she had imagined when she walked down the aisle 3 years ago. It was not the life she had planned or hoped for or dreamed about, but it was hers, built from the ashes of everything she had lost, stronger because of what she had survived, better because she had finally learned who she really was. The doorbell rang. Eleanor frowned. It was after 9. She was not expecting anyone. I will get it, Caro said, already moving toward the stairs. But Eleanor shook her head. No, I will go. She walked downstairs and opened the front door. A delivery person stood on the porch holding a small package. Snow fell around him, catching the light from the porch lamp. Eleanor Mitchell, he asked. Yes, sign here, please. She signed. The delivery person handed her the package and disappeared into the night. Eleanor carried the box inside. It was light, no return address. Her name was printed in neat letters on the label. Something about it made her uneasy. She opened it carefully. Inside was a photograph of Eleanor holding Caroline in the park last Tuesday. The angle suggested it had been taken from a distance, from a hiding place, from someone who had been watching without being seen. Beneath the photograph was a note. Margaret was just the beginning. The family you destroyed had friends, friends with long memories, friends with resources you cannot imagine. Enjoy your happiness, Eleanor Mitchell, while it lasts. The note was signed with 2 letters. E.H. Eleanor stared at the photograph, at the note, at the threat hidden in polite words. Caro appeared at the bottom of the stairs. What is it? What is wrong? Eleanor did not answer immediately. She looked at the photograph one more time, at herself holding her daughter, at the life she had built from nothing. Then she set the photograph aside. Her hands did not shake. Her breath did not quicken. Her heart did not race. She had learned something in the past 3 months. Fear was a choice, and she was done choosing to be afraid. She pulled out her phone and called her father. We have a problem, she said when he answered. What kind of problem? Eleanor walked to the window. The street outside was quiet. Snow fell gently under the glow of street lamps, coating the world in white. Somewhere out there, someone was watching. Someone was planning. Someone was preparing to continue what Margaret had started. The kind I am going to solve, Eleanor said, just like I solved the last one. She hung up and turned to face Caro. What is going on? Caro asked. Her voice was worried, but her eyes were already calculating, already preparing. Eleanor handed her the note. Caro read it. Her expression darkened. E.H., she said. Who is E.H.? I do not know, Eleanor replied, but I intend to find out. She walked back to the window. Behind her, she could hear Caroline stirring in the nursery upstairs, the soft sounds of a baby waking from sleep. Eleanor had a choice to make. She could run. She could hide. She could take her daughter and disappear, hoping that whoever was watching would eventually lose interest. Or she could fight. Again. She thought about the woman she had been 3 months ago. Broken, humiliated, convinced that she was worthless and alone. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone stronger, someone who had walked through fire and emerged not burned, but forged. Let them come, Eleanor thought. Let them try. She was not the same woman who had stood frozen in a ballroom covered in wine. She was not the same woman who had believed she deserved to be small. She was not the same woman who had accepted cruelty because she thought she had no choice. She was Eleanor Mitchell, survivor, mother, fighter, and she was ready for whatever came next.